It may be Halloween, but boy, does it feel like Christmas. The Dolphins finally make a smart and sound decision for one time in their life. They mutually part ways with Chris Grier. Mutually, he got canned by Stephen Ross, the GM since 2016. He's been inside the organization since 2000. He has been the root of all of the Miami Dolphins issues in terms of their roster construction, the lack of addressing the trenches, offense and defensive line, the inability to use assets the right way, making big-time trades, extending veterans who don't want to be here. Like, you can pull out the laundry list of mistakes of Chris Grier and why the Dolphins have not been able to have a playoff win in over 25 years, but no longer can you say Chris Grier is employed by the Miami Dolphins. And I called out Stephen Ross, the owner, and I said, every day that Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel are employed by the Miami Dolphins is a slap in the face to Dolphins fans. Slap in the face. And I said on the channel 3 weeks ago, I would not be supporting the team wearing merchandise, Dolphins gear that is, until one of Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel are fired. Well, now it feels as if Stephen Ross has finally listened to the fans. He saw all the boos. He saw the garbage bags on heads last night against the Baltimore Ravens and said, enough is enough. This loser, Chris Grier, finally needs to go. And I don't care how they try to spin it in the media. Mutually parting ways is not a real thing. Chris Grier would not openly say, yeah, I no longer want to hold my position. That's not a thing in the middle of the season. So make no mistake, Stephen Ross finally woke up, had enough, and canned his ass. Woo! Feels good. And we have told you that he needs to be fired. We have told you when he does inevitably get fired, we will have a video and go live on the channel, which we did go live. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you turn on notifications, and join the family here at Dolphins Today. Want to read the statement Stephen Ross made when firing Chris Grier, and I'm going to continue to call it a firing because it was. This morning, I made the decision, yeah, right, mutual, along with General Manager Chris Grier to mutually part ways. I have incredible respect for Chris and his family. I want to thank him for his many contributions to the Miami Dolphins over the past 26 years. As I assessed the state of the team and in my discussions with Chris, it became clear to both of us that change could not wait. We must improve in 2025, 2026, and beyond, and it needs to start right now. Champ Kelly will serve as our interim general manager effective immediately, and it will begin our search process for a new general manager. I want to thank Champ for stepping up and his commitment to the Dolphins' success this season. There is a lot of football left to play, and we all need to fight even harder. A lot to take away there. Obviously, Chris Grier and Stephen Ross did not mutually part ways. They fired Chris Grier without a question. And the other part that was interesting to me was that he says we need to improve this year. There's a lot of football left. We need to get better. Like, we're 2-7, dude. Like, I hope he doesn't actually think there's a chance Miami rattles off 8 straight wins to make the playoffs. There's absolutely no world where that happens. Like, I hope people know that. And you need to go 10-7 to make the playoffs with how this AFC wildcard race is shaping up. Like, double-digit wins minimum. So you'd have to win your last 8 games. Ain't going to happen. Postseason off the table here. But could Miami become a more competitive team the rest of the year? I certainly believe they could because of the previous success Champ Kelly has had as interim GM. We'll talk about that here in a second. But one-word reaction to the Dolphins firing Chris Grier. Pen comment on today's show. What's your one word? I'll give you my one word. It is elation. What a word that is. We mentioned Champ Kelly as interim GM. This is not the first time he has held this position. It is not the first time this has happened since the year of 2020. Kind of crazy that he did it. 2 years ago, during the Las Vegas Raiders' crazy tenure. 2023, Las Vegas fired David Ziegler and Josh McDaniels as GM head coach in the first, it was like week 7, week 8 of the NFL season. It was pretty early, just like this one. And Champ Kelly and Antonio Pierce, who was the interim GM and head coach at the time, they went 5-4 in the final 9 games of the season. So Champ Kelly certainly getting his chance to be the interim GM here for the rest of the year. And more importantly, it was a smart decision. And I really said this to Coop before we came live and they filmed this video. Like, this is the smartest decision Miami has made in such a long time. It might be the smartest decision Stephen Ross has made since he became owner of the football team in 2009, because you made this decision on Friday, which allows Champ Kelly as interim GM to have all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday, and half of Tuesday. So essentially 5 days, 4.5, 5 days to assess every inch of this roster in his own merit. Like, he already probably has assessed the roster because he is and was assistant GM prior to becoming interim GM. But now he has full control, full reins. And I'm sure he will have some direction pointed at him by Stephen Ross as the owner. But Champ Kelly now has a full 24 times 4, 96 hours to decide what to do before the trade deadline. Do I trade away everybody and have a fire sale? Players being called on: Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Jalen Watt, Rasul Douglas, even Matthew Judon potentially. So that's certainly intriguing. We'll have probably more trade discussion, not on this video, probably on a video out either later today or early tomorrow, so keep your eyes on that. And we're going to transition the conversation on what's next for the head coach of this football team. Coming up in just 1 second, we're going to look at Mike McDaniel's future in Miami, because there is a report on where things are heading there for the rest of the season and beyond. But before we do that, have you or a friend ever experienced loss, which has you thinking about how to secure your family's financial future? With life insurance through Ethos, your family is protected. Life insurance is a perfect way to make sure you're covered. Right now, you can get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There is no complicated process, and it's 100% online. No medical exam required. You just answer a few health questions. Some policies as low as $2 a day, billed monthly. As of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That is ethos.com/NFL Daily. Application times may vary. Rates may vary. Links in the description and comments of today's video. Let's get into head coach Mike McDaniel, because as most of you know, I believe he should absolutely be fired as well. And I did believe if the Dolphins fired Chris Grier, you would also fire Mike McDaniel, because if you hear me out here for a second, before we get to the reports, it's like when you hire a GM, they are going to want to have their guy. So they are likely, you'd have to imagine, firing both at the same time, clean slate, hire GM first, then hire a new head coach. But doing it to where you have a new GM, but still have the old head coach, this makes it a little bit more complicated. And that will ultimately be the case, because just about 10, 15 minutes after the report came in, which Adam Schefter had first, by the way, on Chris Grier and the Dolphins mutually parting ways, he also reported that Mike McDaniel will remain the Dolphins head coach for the remainder of the season at least, which means for all of us who have wanted Mike McDaniel to be fired because of the lack of attention to detail, the lack of motivation, the consistent second half flat performances, as well as some of the issues in play calling and decision making, it's not going to be the case. He will coach for the rest of the year in Miami, but I do want to address the at least part here, because like me, and I know like a lot of y'all are like, what do you mean at least? Is he going to be the head coach again in 2026? How are they going to continue to let him coach this football team? They are just saying that because they will allow the new GM, whether it is Champ Kelly getting promoted from interim GM to official full-time GM, or if they go outside the building and hire a different GM. And we'll take a look at some potential replacements here in a second. But whoever that new GM is, they are going to make their own decision. They are going to have their own evaluation of where the Dolphins roster was and how much can be blamed on Mike McDaniel. He will have conversations with Mike independently. He will have conversations with Stephen Ross independently. And whoever the new GM is, whether it is Champ Kelly or an outside voice, they will make their own conclusion on if Mike McDaniel is the right guy for the job. Because whoever the new GM is, they are going to have to make the decision. Do I want to marry my future and my new tenure as GM to Mike McDaniel as head coach, or do I want to bring in my new own guy and start fresh? Because you don't want to have what happened in Chicago. I mean, what happened in the Bears? The Bears have had this constant kind of like ebb and flow of hire a GM, hire a head coach, or hire a GM, fire a head coach, hire a GM or a coach, fire the GM. Like, it just goes back and forth, and like, you don't want that. You want everybody to be on the same page. So you got to have this new GM make his own decision. I want, obviously, McDaniel to be gone, but if the new GM makes the decision to keep Mike McDaniel, then that's the decision they go with. But you can also say that's off to a bad start with the new GM. So before we round out the show, we're going to have a video more in depth about this coming up in the next 48 hours. But quick, brief names I want to mention as potential Chris Grier replacements. Obviously, the interim GM, Champ Kelly, is going to have the inside track since he currently is going to hold the position for the final 9 weeks of the NFL season, 8 weeks. Louis Riddick from ESPN is certainly going to be someone that's thrown out there quite a bit, although I am not the biggest fan of Louis Riddick becoming the next GM. The 4 names that I am intrigued with the most is Ray Agnew, the assistant GM for the Lions, Chad Alexander, the assistant GM for the Chargers, Ed Dodds, the assistant GM for the Colts, and Ian Cunningham, the assistant GM for the Bears. Common themes in all 4 of those teams. They are built through the trenches. The Chargers, Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, Ray Agnew, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Ed Dodds, DeForest Buckner. They have one of the best offensive lines in football, the best offense in football right now. Ian Cunningham even really addresses that offensive line in Chicago as well. I think those 4 are great options. I think all 4 of them would be very welcomed. And I do want to throw this potential idea out there as well. As Chad Alexander, the assistant GM for the Chargers, is there a world where you hire him next January as your GM and he poaches the current defensive coordinator for that team, Jesse Minter, who would certainly have the support of owner Stephen Ross, since he helped give the Michigan Wolverines a national championship a couple years ago. Ross, a massive donor and alum of the University of Michigan. I mean, listen, if I follow trends, I could absolutely see Chad Alexander being hired as the next GM, which would not be a bad hire, and then him ultimately say, yeah, no Mike McDaniel, and brings in Jesse Minter from the Chargers. Certainly an option there. All right, who do you want to be the next Dolphins general manager? I know it's very early in the process, and we'll have a lot to talk about between now and the next GM actually being hired in January. You heard the first 6 names that I threw out there and the 4 that I'm really intrigued with. I think my top 2 would actually be Ray Agnew and Ed Dodds, the assistant GMs for Detroit and Indianapolis, respectively. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. And make sure you are subscribed, because we'll continue to have you covered over the next 72, 96 hours. And boy, when the trade deadline's here on Tuesday, we will be live. So subscribe and be on the lookout.